Hey, Nicholas of the Backyard TARDIS here with another review. We're still looking at Mandalorian Season 3. Chosen to do this now more by episodes, but we are going to be looking at the second episode of the season, episode 18, Minds of Mandalore. And while I seem to have really liked the first episode more than everybody else, a lot of people felt it was more of a rehash, but this was the episode that actually hooked a lot of people. I was a little more meh on, and I'll go into my reasons for that, but there was a lot of good things in here. So last season we'd seen him visit Karga, trying to fix IG-11. The Babu freaks, the Zalen, whatever their species name is, said, you need a new brain computer. So he's like, well, who do I know that deals and stuff? And he goes to Peli on Tatooine. Yes, back to Tatooine, because that is the heart of Star Wars. Everything happens on Tatooine. But Peli, you know, she's built up, and she's also another character that people are very hot and cold on. I really like Peli. I find her very funny. A lot of people find her grating, but I'm never going to complain about her. In fact, we see her doing a lot of fun stuff here, because we see her basically dealing with the Jawas that they go rip people off and bring it to her, and she puts stuff on. So she has this symbiotic relationship. Like, she's not like, oh, yeah, I got this part in, and she's sitting there, I got to order it, I got to do this, I got to do that. And, you know, as a small business owner, you deal a lot of times with people who expect things immediately. And sometimes it's like, hey, you want this one little part. If I order that, it's going to cost $20 to ship it. And some companies have a minimum order fee, which means I have to buy a bunch of stuff I don't need. But the next day, I'm probably going to need something. So sometimes it's like, okay, it's going to take about a week to get in. Part of that can sometimes mean that, hey, I got to you know, get a few more things from other people that need to put orders in to put the order in. I can't put in an order every day, or my business will go out of business, and they definitely don't want to pay what it's going to cost to. And she's kind of dealing this with them, you know, but she's doing a little bit more shady, a little more underhanded, you know, just like you experience with a mechanic. You know, it happens. No offense to any listeners out there that are mechanics, but this is kind of some of the nature of the business. There's just a little bit of that to it. But and she's really find out that she's pretty scummy, because, you know, she's specifically having them go out. I know we had years ago, we had officers question us because somebody was going around town squirting super glue in people's locks. And we were getting swamped with the calls, but the police finally were investigating because so many were happening, and they thought, well, it must be one of the locksmiths in town are doing it to get extra work. It's like, no, it's a pain in the butt to fix. You know, we're not doing it. But it just made me think of, like, if a mechanic shop was like going out and stealing catalytic converters to then you know, put them back on people's cars. Now, she says, no, this R5-D4. Yes, the one from A New Hope, the one with the bad motivator. I love this. I am a lover of droids. I had this action figure as a kid because I love droids so much. I thought so much about this droid and all the whatever happened to that droid. And the idea that this is a droid that did belong to an X-Wing pilot. We don't know which pilot it is, but he did belong from somebody who was in the rebellion, and he had happened to be upon Tatooine and scavenged. And the fact that she's had him all this time, he's not sellable because he's just in bad condition. And, you know, and she's like being the used car, oh yeah, it's got the full warranty guarantee, I tuned it all up, and he's like, you know, he's still failing. I just love it. And I just love, like, when you think of New Hope, we'll see later in the show, like, they give him the rocket boosters like R2. It's just like, okay, R5 had all these skills. it's funny, but it also gives him the personality of a coward, where he was a lot like C-3PO. You know, he was more timid at this, where R2 was the one that instigated. Obviously, he wouldn't work for that, but yet he still has some heroic nature because he was a rebel. So now he's got R5, and they convert and get rid of the bubble. This, to me, this was something that I questioned, because they made such a point of creating that bubble for Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett, and then to turn around and go, no, R5's going to go there. It really tells me that they have a lack of direction going in it. This stuff is happening too fast. They're not sitting out and planning it. It just shows what a big, some of the on-high direction about how Luke and Grogu are handled, about the firing of Gina Carano, like this big kind of studio interference boulder that was thrown in, has affected the show, because they had everything laid out. Multiple shows, this big MCU-style plan that all leads up to this team-up thing movie that just recently got announced. But here we're seeing, like, they redesigned, they gave him this new ship, and they had to invent it all so that Grogu could be on it. And what's one of the first things they do? Get rid of the little Grogu ball so they can hit R5. That doesn't seem like good planning. Now they go down to the planet. It's difficult. They get in, but they get in and they go, it's livable, but, well, we got to have R5 go down and do the scans. He definitely doesn't look like the robot that can do spelunking, but they send him out. He doesn't come back. And his little beep, 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 that was cool. Like, Grogu's concern for droids, I love it. I love it. Which is really good. Like, Din Djarin is like the dad that doesn't like dogs. But he goes, oh, the dog, go save the dog. No, Daddy, the dog. And the dad's like, just, oh, I hate dogs. You know, there are those dads that, it's not that they hate dogs, but they just hate, like, the responsibility of them. The kid's like, and then it's always constantly, oh, the dog's going to get out of the daddy. As someone who has lots of animals, to the point that there are days when I'm like, as much as I love all these animals, I've reached my max. I could totally be in an apartment with no animals. And my daughter's like, we need like 5 more dogs. No. My wife does dog training for a living. So we not only have our 3 dogs, but we usually have 1 to 3 guest dogs in the house, in kennels, that are misbehaving dogs that are being trained to behave. So it's like you always have this continual untrained puppy in my house. So I'm like, with dogs. So I kind of totally get like the dad thing of like, just like, oh, you want a dog, but who's going to feed it? Who's going to pick up its poop? Who's going to do all this? Well, you know, it's going to be dad, you know, and that's a very dad thing, because, you know, it's like a dad always, you know, oh, we should have another kid. It's like, who's going to feed it? Because that's the mom's perspective. Like, you know, she's like, another kid? Are you crazy? I'll go insane. But dads, you know, it's like pets. It's like, it's going to become my responsibility. Anyways, tangent. But he goes down. Their species, they're called the Almanites, a native troll-like species. Now, this is from the old Legends books and comics and stuff. So it's really cool that they brought these in. These are what would have been out in the wastelands, the radioactive area of the planet. Maybe they're Mandalorians who got irradiated and they've just become like zombie monsters that are out there. I don't know. Or maybe there's some other species that has like fast-tracked to a more intelligence. Who knows? But they can endure the harsh radioactive area of the planet or whatever. But now they're coming into the Mando cities. And so, you know, Mando's fighting him. We get some cool action. This is once again the road to redemption is not easy. It's not just simple that he's gonna walk there and go in the pool. He needs acts to prove his redemption. But then he's captured by the Netflix Lost in Space robot. As cool as this robot looks, and as cool as the fights and everything were with this robot, I had a ton of issues with it. One, it 100% looks just like the robot from Lost in Space on Netflix, that reboot series. Shockingly so. Shockingly so. I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix had their lawyers like look into it if they had a lawsuit on their hand. Like, is this something we could win? Could we sue Disney? Because if they could, they would, and because this is so close. But the other thing was, they don't ever explain it. What was it doing there? And then it captures him. I don't like that. A lot of people looked at this as, oh, he couldn't defeat this thing, but, Bo-Katan could. It catches him by surprise. He gets put in a trap. You know what? Something similar to that? Think back to Han, Chewie, Luke, all of them, and then, Chewbacca grabs the meat and they go, how intelligent is Han Solo at disciplining things? How, you got a couple of intelligent droids there. Luke has the Force. They're all caught in that net. So I don't find it at all demeaning that Mando gets caught into a secret trap. He sees a Mando, he goes down there. But what is this droid / alien? Because there is an alien inside it. What are they after? Are they wanting Mandalorian blood to clone an army of Mandalorians? Are they some other species that lives on the planet? Are they somebody... Because if they're just down there pillaging Mandalore, why do they want his blood? Or is that just what their species does? Their species lives on that. And they really wanted the Almanites. Was that what the trap was for? Was to capture them and to consume them. Anyways, we have that. We have, Grogu come in there. And Grogu fighting his way out. He comes. We're seeing that he definitely had this training with Luke. And I kind of touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but I think a lot of this is, once again, not the planning out. They just knew they had to do in Book of Boba Fett, but I don't think they truly planned out how long that time. They may have had an idea, but if it was really concrete, if they really knew what it was going to be, I think they would have done a 2 years later note. But they didn't. That was just kind of what they were thinking the general timeline was, but they didn't have a definite thing nailed down. And because they didn't have a definite nailed down, they probably didn't want to put it on screen and box themselves in. Because maybe there was going to be something else in canon that was going to happen that was going to say, oh no, it could only be a year, or it had to be 3 years. So they didn't want to put down a number. But it really kind of messes, like, learning that. I think a lot of confusion would have been solved if there was just a time jump on the thing that it told you that there was a time jump. But definitely we are seeing it through action as Grogu is successfully going there. He gets in the ship, and you see he was getting trained by Luke. Well, he was also getting trained by Mando. Dim was there showing him how to fly the ship. Had him there, show him star charts. This is your home, these are the planets. So he knew how to get back to Bo-Katan. He did this without the help from Mando at all. He got there, and I love how, like, she had the attitude of, like, I am done with this argument. I'm gonna kill him. Which, everyone's like, why would she do it? And then she risked everything to see him, because she wasn't really gonna kill him. She was just like, I am going to convince him to leave. And, this is her attitude. She thinks he's a good person. That's why she doesn't want to kill him in combat to take the Darksaber. She wants to save her people, but she also respects Din. So she comes, she defeats it, and she gets the Darksaber there. What happens, it goes in a little thing, and there's just like this constant battle, back and forth, back and forth. Din kind of warns her. And then we have a big thing that happens after all that. Because after all that's said and done, she says, guess what? I'll take you down there. And they go down to the waters, and he says that, and she talks about her baptism. Oh, I believed in all this. But I wasn't baptized because I wanted to. I didn't take a creed like you. I mean, I did, but I didn't believe in any of it. It was just my parents' thing. I did it, and everybody clapped and applauded in the whole nation because I was special. This is very much something that, as a minister, I deal with. Young ones who get baptized, not because they actually have a commitment or vow to God, but because that's what their parents want them to do, what social pressure teaches them to do. And the moment they get away from home, they fall away from the faith. Why? Because they never made it their own before they made the dedication. And so then they feel burdened by it. It's like people who get married before they become adults. You know, they don't really know themselves, and then they get married, and then 5 years later they're like, who is this person? Who am I? We're not compatible. And they go off. The commitment means nothing to them. That's why it's important to really, when somebody's making that commitment, help search them out. Make sure that they are knowledgeable enough that they understand what they're agreeing to. Bo-Katan didn't. She just was doing what was expected of her. And so it's easy to understand where now she's had a lot of bad happen in her life because of that. And so she looks at the creed and all that stuff. She has that apostate attitude. But as Din goes in, he hits off the cliff, and he sinks straight down. Now, he took his back, he took everything off that he needed off because he's getting in the water, and he jumps in, and I think he got knocked out because he hit a rock on the way down. So because he just sank. Boom. Now everyone's like, oh, it's lighter. Come on. Beskar may be light, but it's not lighter than his body's buoyancy. Like, it's gonna sink. And, it's not like he's built like a hollow boat. And so, he sinks straight down, hits the rock on the way down, and boom, he's like, Bo-Katan's like, whoa, jumps in after him. And what does she see but the mythosaur? And Grogu, we get a sense that he notices, he feels it, and, this shocks her. Why? The mythosaur appearing could be comparable to an event like the burning bush. This is seeing a miracle sign of the manifestation of her faith. This is a mythical creature doesn't believe in that, of a religion that she's lost faith in. It would be like if somebody who grew up in a Christian household or Jewish household or whatever, and then they had become atheist, and an angel appeared to them. It would be life-shocking for most. Now, some people, and there's been examples in the scripture, they go hard the other way. They stay obstinate. But look at an example of, like, a Christian example of Paul, was Saul. He was out. He was a Jew. He was so much into his belief that these Christians were contaminating the religion. So he was out putting them to death, stoning them. He was a staunch against it. He, for all intents and purposes, was opposed to the faith. However, when he had Jesus appear to him, that was a moment that was like, boom. His life completely changed because he was a person of passion, a person of action. Bo-Katan is such a similar person. She is a person of action. She has always been. And she has gone out and done what she thought was right. And so she was at a moment when she was like, you Mandalorians are a joke. Like, the galaxy should be rid of us. All we do, this, that, all these dreams she had, we've done nothing but fight and kill each other. We have nobody to blame but ourselves, is basically the rhetoric she's doing. And she sees that mythosaur, and instantly, things change. And so that takes us into the convert. See, in the convert, here we see Bo-Katan talking to Din. She doesn't pull her helmet off. She wasn't walking around with her helmet on before she jumped in after Din, but now she's not taking her helmet off. And now she's kind of, but she doesn't tell him about the mythosaur, because she's still trying to figure out, what does she think about that. Now they go return to her home, but they're attacked by ties, and they are just getting slammed by ties. This is wonderful. Of course, they see her going through the canyon. I like how they brought out the fact that she's just not an exceptional pilot. Like, she grew up racing this canyon. She knows this canyon. That's why she's such a good... But then she's like, oh, but it's been a while. So, but she's able to do that. And the move where she, like, puts the things up and it stops the... And you see R5 in the back going weightless. Oh, it is just love. Love, love, love that thing. Such a good and strong start to this. And then Bo-Katan's castle gets blown up. Once again, reliving the pain of what the Empire did to Mandalore. Even now, her family colony, you know, out on this other planet or moon, I'm not exactly sure where it is, but it's in the Mandalorian system. It's destroyed too. Then we cut to Dr. Pershing, and he's giving a speech, and this is where I start to have a ton of issues with this show. First off, Dr. Pershing, what he's shown here, this episode, everything with Dr. Pershing could have been cut down to 10 minutes, 15 at most. However, this was like a 45-minute episode, and almost 25 or 30 minutes of that was with the Pershing plot, which felt very much outside of the flavor of what Mandalorian is. It is part of the greater plot, but it's not essential. We're learning all about, and this is interesting stuff. I'm not going to say it's not interesting. We're learning about how the rebels are rehabilitating all the Imperial officers that, you know, as they're dismantling that and they're tearing all their warships apart and all this, and demilitarizing. Now, a lot of this is to set up the prequels. They're setting up the New Republic just being completely incompetent, completely corrupt, to show how the First Order could arise, not as remnants of the Empire, but something that basically called back to the Empire. They are not a continuation of the Empire. They are something new that springs forth from these people who were rehabilitated Imperials, put into the New Republic, who then started to miss the good old days and do their thing, but they are members of the New Republic. The First Order is. It's really interesting how they're setting all this up. Now, Pershing, we see the one lady that is, she's like Gideon's right-hand person, and she's like right off the bat, she's trying to make friends with Pershing. He wants to do his research into cloning. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Cloning was a bad thing. That went way back. No, cloning is outlawed. Now, that's interesting. We have stuff like that today. There is certain research, although possibly beneficial, because of just how bad things were shown, and maybe some mishapped experiment, some example of when it was used in warfare, that there are international laws that the UN has put in place. Like, you can't mess around with biological warfare. Genetic testing is highly regulated, because, you know, people talk about maybe the thing that we went through for a couple of years was developed in a lab. Maybe it wasn't. I'm not going to talk about that, and I don't want YouTube to take this video down. But that's what people's worry is. Like, so here, it's like genetically engineer and make it, like, anytime any company starts talking about this, everybody kind of gets a, like, oh, like, right now, I think Musk is talking about some rehabilitation, like, chip in the brain that'll make, you know, paralyzed people walk, and it'll make addicted people unaddicted to, you know, drugs and stuff like that. And it's like, those are such amazing ideas, but all the ways it could go horribly wrong, and the idea of, like, okay, let's start producing this en masse and have everybody put chips in their brain. Like, everybody who hears that, no matter how much you are oh man, I want the future now, because I'm one of those people. Like, I want to be able to close my eyes and play a video game. Like, I love that kind of idea of, like, better than the holodeck. Like, I just want to close my eyes and put myself into gamer mode and sit in a chair and, like, be experiencing, you know, Ready Player One. But the idea of doing that and doing that almost, like, you get a little bit of chill. You're like, that's, no, you shouldn't do that. So this is one of the things, like, the New Republic is like, hey, yeah, you're gonna help people replace their organs and all that, but no, cloning stuff, that went very bad. We don't want to bring cloning back. That's off the tables. It created a huge war. No. Okay. And they give him a menial job, which, hey, if you're somebody who has a record, who goes out and the government's like, we'll help you find work, that work is not usually the most fulfilling. It is work to get you on the road, you know. The same thing of anybody who's like, a lot of times when somebody was captured in war or something, a lot of times they don't, you know, sometimes they did, you know, take top scientists and stuff, but a lot of times people are just used to do small, unimportant tasks so they can't disrupt society by it. But it's just the way they show the politicians in the New Republic. It's just, you know, it is to prop up the prequels. I mean the sequels. And I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't mind, like, I'm not saying, oh, make those non-canon or something like that, but make the New Republic the good guys. This is supposedly like 7 or 8 years after Return of the Jedi. I don't want to hear that the good guys won and they're just like, and they go, oh, but that's realistic. That's how the real world works. Yeah, it is. That's not how I want Star Wars to work. Star Wars is escapism. And I feel like some of this, where it was more Imperial drama, kind of, well, New Republic drama, but it was more, you know, going through and this and that. It had enough of an Andor vibe that Andor fans were really happy. But this isn't Andor. That's what Andor's for. It's for people who want that. This is the Mandalorian. This is the fun, campy, retro, you know, sci-fi gunslinger, you know, thing. And that's not what this episode was. All to lead to, they fry his brain because his information can't get out. Realistically, they could have just had her kill him. They didn't have to do this whole going through and having the glowing ice cream and showing Coruscant. That was a giant waste of time. They introduce him, they show what that's like, they ask him the questions with the droid, and then they have her do one act of befriending, and then they show her betray him. They don't have to have him go on this big thing, build up this confidence over time. We didn't need all that. Let's get back to what was good, though. Din Djarin and Bo-Katan arrive at the secret Mandalorian hideout here, and this is interesting. Din provides proof. He provides some of that water, and it shows that that water on that planet has something to its chemical makeup. And this is something important because I think there's a little bit about it in the legends, but one of the reasons why other people can't purify Beskar is because they don't have the living waters. And there's something, the Beskar does something to the water, like it purifies it. And so when she's able to put it in, and it's like, this is clear water. She tests it. Yes, you made it to the waters of Mandalore from the mines, because this water is just like the water from my kiln where I'm making all this armor, which is infusing this water with that, and they are the same. The armorer does as a minister, she does that. Now Bo-Katan, like, people are opposed, like, this person's an apostate. And she, once again, she says, did you do this? Have you done this? This? And once again, she accepts Bo-Katan in. She takes that role as a religious leader, and she's bringing her back into the fold. And she says, as long as you are not going to speak apostate ideas, and as long as you are willing to come back in and live the life, you're welcome. And that's really how most religions and faiths work. You know, it's not about what you were, it's about what you're going to do forward. And so, I really like the Armorer's character. Everybody's like, oh, I want to see Armor and Bo-Katan fight, and Din's gonna have... That was never going to be her role. And that shouldn't be her role in this. And she is looking for the leader, the deliverer. And so, she does talk about Bo-Katan, like, oh, she made a lot of mistakes. She's very aware of her mistakes. But she's in that. So, that's where we're going to stop it here. We're going to talk about the Foundling and the Pirate in the next one. But this episode of the Convert, I really like the first 5-10 minutes and the last 5-10 minutes. And all the stuff in the middle was a whole lot of meh. And it was for a whole lot of purpose of meh. And I really, really dislike it. That said, if that was the only thing I was going to dislike in this season, I would have been 100% okay with it. It was something that I disliked, but not enough to be angered. It's something that I just like, I don't know, you could have had that story, just cut it in half. And having the Moncal be like, yeah, I like wiping mine, like, that just felt really off. That felt really off. So, I also don't like what it says about, like, society today, like, the idea of, like, when he said, I just take it to, you know, I've done it to myself to make me feel happier. We live in a society that's about taking a pill to feel happier. And a lot of my family has to take medication. I am not disparaging that. But there is a big problem in the world today with people not attacking things from your personal life, your family, dealing with things, getting help that way, spiritually, and with family and friends, and just, they want a pill that you will take and make it better. And from someone who has a lot of family that suffers from depression, who take pills, there is no one pill you take that makes you happy. And that almost felt like that's what that was selling. Like, hey, I did the mind flash thing to myself, not because I needed to be recorrected and readjusted that way, but just because I wanted to feel happier. That's wrong. That's wrong thinking. And so that bothered me. But, okay, we're going to close it there, and we will catch it in the next episode. Hope everybody has a good day, and I will see you in the next video.